advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
You are what you watch. Hello, my name is Atty. Welcome to our program. The current events that are now unraveling are quite disturbing. Only this morning I read an article in the Inquirer where they are now creating, a parallel, so to speak, no? Si Pinoy going by way of this old man, millionaire industrialist American, si Harry Stonehill. Interestingly enough, the nemesis of Pinoy, the father, meaning President Macapagal, was in the heart of this scam, this big anomaly that turned out early 1960s. Now, whether he's going to suffer the same fate, I guess we're going to see. Ladies and gentlemen, our problem today is government. It's called the loss of integrity. The scam, which involves this very infamous person, Napoles, has already gotten much bigger. So to speak, parang linalabas natin yung parang a can of worms. Parang toothpaste lumabas na sa tube na hindi na kaya ibalik. It seems everyone is involved, not just the legislative, meaning the senators, the 3 or 8 senators that are now involved, 27 and now up to 50 congressmen and growing, but likewise the executive, the different agencies that are involved, as to, well, do they know what they're doing? In other words, competence in leadership. There seems to be a growing distrust with government, be it the executive, the legislative, and even the judiciary. After all, it only takes 10 years, if not a century, to resolve any case in this country. Is it the system? Is it the judges? Is it the clerk of courts? Is it the lawyers? Is it the system as a whole? In Facebook, which has been the forefront of all these marches, many are beginning to question themselves, and many are coming up clean and saying, hey, I'm corrupted, how do I correct myself? I think there's a need to identify in business what we call a commission and what you call pocketing or thievery or what you call robbing the treasury. Ibang-iba po yung ninanakaw ang kaba ng bayan sa isang negosyante, kumukuha ng komisyon pag may nabibenta o nabenta. There's a difference. Commissions do not necessarily mean the same thing as discretionary funds. We've got a lot of issues, and a lot of critical thought needs to be put out right there in the audience. You have to identify exactly what the issues are. This involves your country. Now, should you not want to care, if you have no children, you're going to die anyway, and you're going to die and kill your name, hey, so be it. Go out and, who cares? But if you're born here, this is your country, and you decided to stay here, and you have children, what you call a continuance of your name, your species, so to speak, you better stand up and find out what's going on. We've got a real big problem. Ang matuwid na daan ay ngayon kini-question ng taong bayan. Bakit nangyayari ito? We don't know. Now, other than the politics, ladies and gentlemen, we have other issues which are equally important. Just because Napoles is there, dun lahat tayo tining. Hindi po, ang dami po nangyayari. I'll give you an example. Just last night, we have this issue with the MNLF, and i.e. meaning Nur Miswari. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we incarcerated him, and Tita Cory brought him back into the country, only now to become a bigger problem to what we call the Bangsamoro deal, or the MILF. Meantime, it has metastasized into what we call the BIFF. I mean, gee, they're just going to keep growing down there. Meaning we have the conflicts in Mindanao, and we have to look at that too. Then we have other issues. We've got the big monopolies, the giants, the taipans that run the country, the 80 or so families that have been up there for the last 6 to 10 decades and refuse to come down. Who knows? They may be the puppet, people who hold the strings to the puppet of what we call government, just like Harry Stonehill. We don't know that yet. But at the rate this scam is metastasizing, we are sure to find out. With the media trying to sell the news to be at the forefront, well, hang on, that can be a wrong statement because media can also be misleading. So be careful of what you read, be careful of what you see and watch, and be careful of what you hear. Now let me bring you into our topic this evening. The question being, why are FDIs, that would stand for foreign direct investments, why have they become so elusive in our country? Everywhere around Southeast Asia, tayong kulelat. Financing doesn't come in, foreign capital doesn't come in. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, in the 60s, we were manufacturing steel. Only in 2013, until now, wala pa rin. Why these questions? These are of equal priority, if not the main priority, because without FDIs, we'll be dead in the water. Our resource for this evening is Attorney Anthony, let me see, Amumategi. Ang ganda ng middle name niya po, Spangol, Abad. He is CEO of the Trade Advisory Group. Hello, Attorney Abad. I can't pronounce your middle name.
Amunatigi.
Amunatigi. Kasi yung silabol ko, nasa wrong hyphen. Amunatigi. That's how you have to say. Amunatigi. Attorney Abad, I guess the rightful, straightforward question is, bakit elusive sa Pilipinas? Why are we so kulelat, so to speak? Why do we not get the proper foreign direct investment our neighbors are getting? Basically, in a nutshell, we can start from that.
Well, I guess the short answer would be that this is a poor quality investment site. And you have to liken a foreign direct investor to maybe yourself when you want to buy a property or you're actually moving to another country. I mean, they're important personal...
That's simple, huh? Bring it down.
Yeah, it's that simple. Would you go to a place where you were uncertain of the environment that you're working in? You know,
I would think the other way around. At first, I would think natural resource. Check, the Philippines has that.
Yes.
We have labor force, young labor force. Check, we've got that. Communications, English speaking. Check, we've got that. Hardworking. Yeah, pwede na, pwede pasar. Check. Do we have the skilled workers? Can be trained. Check. Diba? We've got all of this.
Yes.
But, may problema tayo. Branding, I guess. It comes down to branding because do we know what we're doing? Oops, X. Are we not corrupt? Oops, X. Because the newspapers are telling the whole world we are corrupt. Our leaders are corrupt. So is this the reason it's only political?
Well, I guess how would you describe it is more of political economy. It is how the economy interacts with the governance, the political structure.
Unstable.
Yeah, it's not given towards long-term growth, and the type of growth which has become the term which has become popular is now inclusive growth.
Inclusive. Does Thailand have that? Because Thailand, di ba, meron silang the reds against the yellow yellow flag, the yellow colors, di ba?
Yes.
The north and the east, nag-aaway-aaway sila. And yet they have that turmoil. Just a year ago, naggera pa nga sila sa kalye, di ba? They even burned a mall. Yes. Correct me if I'm wrong. How come they're not disturbed?
Well, I think Thailand is still in a state of evolution politically, but it's an old kingdom, and the way I tend to compare the Philippines to many of even the authoritarian countries around the region is that it's the loyalty of its citizenry and its leadership to the state, to the nation.
Kumbaga.
Or they
there's control of some sort.
Yeah, or when bottom line, when they come down to it, they are going to die for that country, and they are loyal to the concept of Thailand or China or Vietnam. Whereas here, and I think this is what foreign direct investors see, is that the leadership, the very people who should be taking care of us, who should be protecting us, actually have no loyalty, even to the concept of Philippines as a nation. And from that concept, all the problems begin.
Has it been so obvious? Has media promoted this very poor branding? Or is it so obvious in the way we run our businesses or the experience of those that are already here? being mga multinationals that have invested in. Mukhang, nainis sila, umalis sila.
Yeah, I think it's not only our media that maybe plays up the poor branding. I think the investor, again, as a rational individual or firm that will want to part with its money into a place where it feels completely at ease.
The 60-40 is not a problem. The requirement of Filipino being 60% and 40.
Well,
that's not the main issue, no.
Not the main issue. It's part of the problem.
But not the main.
Not the main issue, I think.
So it's branding.
Yeah, well, I think the foreign direct investors sees the quality of our nation and how we conduct ourselves, especially our leadership, and makes a decision on whether or not it's worth putting in FDI. And FDI is long-term in,
Yes.
inherently.
20, 30, 50 years at
Yes,
least.
at least, because you
At
need
least.
to, put in ROI and all of that. So the 60-40 is important, I think, maybe almost symbolically, to indicate that there is seriousness on the part of the Philippine leadership, that we really want to be part of the global economic system. And so national restrictions on investment, which should not be in
There
an
to
organic
begin with.
law to begin with, they see the whole irrationality of it, and I think that's what turns them off.
Tony, you do studies. You don't just do your law firm. You don't just do your clients and services. You also deal with many of them abroad and communicate with different groups, no? Sa gobyerno naman natin, no matter whatever the current event is that's ongoing, those who are in the thick of it right now, meron naman tayong mga ekonomista dyan, miski pa paano na educated, learned, alam naman nila yan eh.
Yes.
Why is it that this continues to sustain this poor image and branding and them knowing? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what you just said.
Yes.
I mean, I've read this over and over and over. The Economist, hell, gee, I read it in the newspapers, di ba?
Yes.
Why is it our leaders, so to speak, in the business communities, bakit kaya this is allowed? Why do we continue to persist in this bad and poor performance that shed them away, and yet openly we say, no, we need foreign direct investments. Pero yung pala, hindi.
Okay, I
Is
think
it government incompetence, those people? Mahina ba sila? Bobo ba sila sa taas?
no, there are plenty of brilliant people out there,
All right.
even in the government
Yeah,
now.
in the government. I meant in the government.
People like R.C. Balisacan as NEDA head.
Yeah.
He's a smart guy, and
I
he
didn't
knows-
want to zero in.
But he
okay.
knows what has to be done. R.C. knows that, but
But
I think the whole system prevents the more enlightened ones to come out, and this is a system I see that can be traced back even to our colonial history.
so culture, heritage.
It's a whole combination of factors, I think. But that's the whole nature of how they set up the Philippines. Rather than a productive base where everyone is considered as a participant, they set it up as a colonial sort of center for extracting resources.
And there I was thinking we were a democracy.
That's what I thought so too.
So it's not a democracy if
No,
the
it's-
system
no, it's not.
is incongruent of all its parts that cannot work together.
Yeah, we are not a democracy. We are still that same colonial administration, but we changed names. We started putting things like Congress and Constitution and
But
the president.
It's not true. We're still being ruled by 80 or so families that are still running the
Yes.
country until
So
today.
There's a governor general. He works for this elite. There's
Yes.
no more center in Spain or in Acapulco telling us what
Yes.
to do. So the people who are left behind are
They
doing
maintained it. Sila
Yes.
naging powers that are.
yes, and still doing the same extractive and exploitative type of behavior, and structured that way. So whoever the Spaniards have left, then the Americans come in, then the Japanese come in, then an indigenous group comes in. It's, now it's Filipinos, it's Chinese Filipinos,
Combination of
a combination. The names change, but it's the same behavior going on from way back.
If we have all this talent, and okay, I'd like to think and qualify, since you know a lot of people in your field of expertise, I'm sure there are many who you still share integrity with or for as well, be it the NEDA guy, because I think may integridad yun eh.
Yes.
I mean, it's obvious naman, he's not involved in anything. And he's pretty much successful on his own. He doesn't need government to steal money from. Why is it hindi nila ma-penetrate or hindi nila mabuksan? Is it because the people on top in government, because the incongruent relationship of all that, well, sa bagay nakikita natin yan, di ba? Yung agencies, I don't know what they're doing. I'm passing it on to the NGO, and the NGO doesn't know what the other one's doing.
It's a classic, it's this AIDS problem. And I was in government, so I could see that we were just trying to...
You couldn't correct it, even if you tried to talk about it.
That's another lesson I realized. Even when you had an agency,
you can't correct anything.
You can't correct it. Unless you really had the blessings
power
from the very top, and that the top was willing to change things.
But as a people, as a country, and I was saying check, check, check on the checklist earlier, we can do it.
Yes, it's possible. Anything is possible, I think. So,
no, because we have the population more than Thailand, Vietnam,
Yes.
well, not Indonesia, mas marami sila, but you have a Muslim country, and that's even more unstable, and yet they do, what, 15, 20 billion more than what we get,
Yes.
di ba? Every year, parang ganun lumalabas. Tayo hindi natin kaya because government doesn't want us to succeed. That's what it is. The system of governance, not necessarily the government people, the system of governance.
yeah, or maybe that success in that kind of success is not what is important to those in power now. For
Is
us,
it
it's
now or
important.
has it always been?
I think it's always been.
Oh, because it's not just Pinoy. I mean, it's been how long now? Even with GMA, we had that problem with Ramos, Estrada going back, even in Marcos' time. Yet, during Marcos' time, we had industry. We had the steel industry. We had even textile industry. Ano nangyari? Di ba we shoot them out? We close them out.
Yeah, well, the problem is on the industry front, in business and economics, basically, is what we allowed all of these sectors to become monopolies, to become closed sectors, depending on captive markets, rather than comparing us to Japan, for example, and South Korea.
They keep opening.
Yeah, that they saw the world as their market. So all their industry had to be re-engineered and geared towards that global market with the global tastes and preferences and standards. Whereas here, we just wanted to make sure that the poor Filipino
Stays poor.
and had nowhere to go or anything else to buy except my product. That's why tariffs had to stay high, or we had to keep out any imports. We had to make sure that there's only a dominant firm, or if there were a group of firms, that these firms would come to agreements about prices, no, and market share and other factors.
That's a very sinister point of view. I mean, very sinister to the point that there are certain people who like to stay on top to keep everybody down so that they will stay on top forever. For example, Shoemart, a big conglomerate like Shoemart, which now goes into other industries, which holds off the other big boys from coming in from abroad, be it Costco from the UK, for example, or in America, the big chains. Ayaw nila papasukin. And the reason being, ang Pilipino stupid to do anything about it. How about the businessmen? We know about it. You know about it. But you can't change the system.
Well, you're also exposed to business. Actually, in fairness, no, we don't want to put down businessmen, but the businessman or the firm has a profit motive. To be a good firm, you must maximize profits.
The business model, yes.
Yes, and through your, through all your powers, you should try to capture a monopoly
With the sustaining
of the sector you're in. The thing is, the state is also supposed to make sure that you're competing. That this is a capitalist system, it is a market system. So the state has to be there to always enforce competition, because business will always try to achieve monopoly where it can. And this happens
profits
everywhere.
Yes, yes. And there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that,
There's
actually.
an open competition. So, can we identify na? Maybe ang nagmamali dito, yung DTI, yung kaklase ko, si Greg Domingo. Baka siya yung nagkakamali dito kasi wala silang ginagawa eh.
Well, there's no discipline in the market, in our current system. So it allows for monopolies, or abuses of what they call abuses of dominant market position or horizontal or vertical agreements of competing firms. So what you have is a situation where the economy is all concentrated.
So the concept of Filipino first is not really very good for the country itself. I mean, in the long run. For example, trying to maintain that all the bigger companies are owned by Filipinos, 60%. I mean, yung
Yeah, well,
the
Filipino
monopoly.
first, meaning it's Filipino first in the world.
No,
which is-
dito in the Philippines,
That's a good cheer, right? But if it is Filipino only, because
Yeah,
I
Filipino
want
only,
I want to be the only company,
which is what's
selling.
happened.
Yeah, then what happens is over 40, 50 years, you deteriorate in quality, and I guess you develop bad habits. No?
What happens now if we maintain this for the next 5, 10 years? We're going to disintegrate, basically, because Filipino-only concept. We don't allow others to come in. In other words, the government is bullshitting us when they say they want foreign direct investment, when in reality, the banks don't, the top guys don't, the Makati Business Club doesn't. Di ba? Parang ganon.
Well, you won't be able to accumulate FDI. You won't be able to accumulate capital for the system.
And do we need capital? Yes, we do.
Yes, that is...
To expand industry.
Yeah, based on studies, really, the countries that have succeeded are those where there is the highest level of what they call capital accumulation. Of course, I'd like to think that the other dimension is really how equitably the capital is distributed, but still, it is about the level of capital you have in the system that determines your ability to generate growth, to build an armed force, to all of these different factors.
Tony, we're at the bottom of the hour. We're going to have to take a short break. I'm bilis. We're talking to you. 25 minutes has just gone by. Kala mo, we just started. Ladies and gentlemen, the priority of trying to understand a system has been made clear by the presentation of Attorney Abad here. Napakasimple intindihin. And yet, parang, paano nangyari naging ganito tayo? So, bumabalik na naman, tayo ang problema, gobyerno natin ang problema. Tsaka hindi lang gobyerno, tayo mismo ang problema. Or, like the legislative, the executive, the judiciary, and all that we're marching against for all of them to step down, maybe we should ask all the monopoly players, the big taipans, to step down as well. At the rate we're going, baka matira yung masa. Do the masa know what they're doing? Isa pa yun. If I'm not mistaken, all that they've done for us is elect and regret. And then we go through another exercise again and spend billions again that go into, I better stop while I'm ahead. Stay with us. When we come back, we'll continue to discuss issues on FDIs, why it being very elusive to the country, and to try and understand if there is a way out of this predicament. We'll be right back. Hello, my name is Harrison Buatco. We're back, and we're discussing the topic being why our FDIs, foreign direct investments, have become elusive to our country. Because that is fact. Tayo po ang kulelat pagdating sa mga investor galing sa iba-ibang mundo na nagpapasok ng kapital sa Pilipinas, kundi man negosyo, industriya. We have Anthony Amunit. Here we go again. The way I pronounce it, Abad. Okay. CEO, Trade Advisory Group. Attorney Abad, I describe harmonic systems as a whole being able to work with multiple detailed parts working as a whole. All the little, like a watch.
Yes, yes.
Everything is synchronized and it is working as it is. But unlike in a business sector, it's not like a watch where everything works together. Ang negosyo is dog eat dog, it's profit. The objective is profit. But in this case, you're saying that has to exist in a marketplace where the law of supply and demand will work together and no one has an edge.
Yes.
This is what you're saying. So that system has to be in place. And for that to be in place, it's not necessarily what you're saying, the virtue of discipline, but walang dapat hindi unequal ang playing field.
Yes.
Okay. How come our legislators through the years have become very elusive to this? Bakit? Is it because they don't love the country, they don't want it to exist, or they're part of the monopolies that are?
Well, to answer that last question, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Now, to go back to history again, there's a book, Why Nations Fail, which now, it's an interesting book if you can get hold of it, that makes comparisons of different colonial systems. Our colonial systems was under the Spanish and was similar to that of the South American system or Latin American system.
Which have failed.
Which have failed
Yes.
miserably. Compared is to the British colonies in North America, so this would be the United States
Yes.
now and Canada. It was,
Hong Kong, for that matter, even Malaysia at one point.
to a large extent, maybe with the exception of India, I think the colonists, those who colonized, who came from the UK, were left to fend for themselves, to build up the colonies on their own. And so they had to develop a sense of real community, otherwise they die.
A nationhood of sort.
Yes, they had to work together. But at the same time, they were also in favor of this law of supply and demand. They were, this was the early part of the concept that capitalism or free enterprise was actually the way to go and not planned economies. So in the concept of law of supply and demand, everyone pursues their own self-interest. Okay? They're all trying to achieve their own profit motive. But no one has an edge over the rest, whether a buyer or seller, and that's where you achieve the harmony, the equilibrium, so to speak, and in the efficiency of the system. But to make that work, you have to have a public service system around it.
A support system of
support
sorts.
system that everyone also contributes to and works on. So you have to have a sense that everyone is a participant, and you were already talking about this sort of a body, a harmonic system.
Yeah, harmonic systems.
Everything works, no? Like a watch or like
Yes, yes.
towards the end goal. So that is the ideal, I think, type of what they say that's where you come up with a strong state, a strong nation.
So, while we cannot really start it from, let's say, step A, B, C, D, E, and create these systems in harmony overnight, we can identify the weaknesses that we already have. One is politics, correct? Two, monopolies, or again, back to politics, because those who are already generating the profits are making sure that they stay on top by using what methods that should not be there. For example, power. So a certain autocracy or a certain strength that says, like for example, the Kuhanko family. Hawak ko yan. Kamag-anak ko, presidente. Of course, that doesn't apply anymore today because Danding is already laid back, baliktad. But in certain issues, maybe the Chinese, for example, holding their influence, lobbying against legislators to make sure things remain the same so they keep the monopolies within themselves. But you see, what I don't understand is we have many analysts and many shrewd businessmen and people who really, for example, in the financing sector, the banking sector, is our banking sector closed? It is, isn't it? Kasi puro families, no? Hindi gaya abroad. I mean, it's public. Dito pag sinabi mo public is still on, like Metro Bank, sure. Nasa ano yan? Nasa stock exchange yan, miski BPI. Pero alam mo, hawak ng Zobel, yung isa hawak ng George T. Hawak pa rin ng isang pamilya. So unless we get rid of that, correct? And equalize the playing field for all to come in. That's what you're saying.
Yes. Well, there has to be a system of competition. So the competition should be the guiding element or the sort of unifying element of the economy. It's always the standard of competition. So we actually drafted the banking law, which allowed for 10 more foreign bank branches to come in, but still a closed system. In other words, you can only bring in 10, and then that was the limit. I think you have to have an open system where banks...
Don't we have now over 55 bank titles? Or they're all interrelated? They're buying each other out.
Yes, we don't know, because we don't have also a legal system that studies ownership structures, concentration, agreements.
Let me ask you, you're a lawyer as well. You're a businessman and lawyer. You seem to be a researcher and studying the world system. Is it not our system in the judiciary and the system that is flawed before we can move forward? I always thought the reason foreign direct investments became elusive was because in this country there's no redress. Kanyari, a mayor stops you, hingihan ka ng pera ng gobernador. Di ba parang ganon? Or the locals, the barangay guys down there, you know, no, hindi pwede. Why? Because I want 200-300 million, you know. You can't go to the court and say, that guy is being corrupt. There is no judicial system, walang redress. And in a capitalist system, when there is no redress, then it's obviously, regardless of what you call the system, it's basically autocratic again. One-man rule, dictatorial.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you can, it's also difficult to do this in sequence. No? I think there may have to be a reform effort on maybe all fronts. But just keep in mind that the state machinery, which includes the three branches of government, unfortunately are set up to service those who are able to accumulate wealth based on this monopoly system or this anti-competitive system.
Which is what we have.
Which is what we have. So I think as long as you have this manner of accumulating wealth, it infects and causes the government to deprioritize the rest of the country. So the priority for government is just to service who is in power,
who's on top and who controls.
Yes.
Where do you see the country in 10, 20 years then? If we have been faltering with FDIs for the past 10 years, correct?
Yeah.
15 years. When did we enjoy good FDIs? When Ramos was there. After the revolution, there was an opening. After 86.
Yes, but
there was a burst.
If you study these were the times when it peaked, and a good showing, especially during Ramos.
Ramos, I remember.
Yeah. But a study that showed, I think, this is already in the 2000s age, Philippines really has been way below the potential for attracting foreign direct investment. So, and you have to make that distinction between FDI and hot money or the portfolio investment.
That's crap.
Which they're using as, you know,
indicator
to say that we're succeeding, but we're actually
hot
not.
money is ridiculous. That's why I don't understand. Maybe the people who are listening to the sauna don't understand the financial systems. But when I heard about the stock market being used to exemplify their greatness, economic prowess, that was a farce. As we can see now, it's faltering, it's going down. It's moving around very fast because of the impending war. You know, things are happening now, di ba, around the world.
Yes.
Kasi lahat sila tinatamaan. Pero tayo, during the height of the last financial crisis, hindi tayo tinamaan. We were shielded because maybe of our own internal consumerism, because we're all born and related in between. We're not really have a tentacle out there in the rest of the world. Is that that's obviously a disadvantage to you, and yet an advantage during times of crisis. When the financial crisis struck in 2007, di ba,
we're actually less affected.
I'm not sure we were affected at all, except for 3 banks that were overextended for over 100, Metro Bank being one of them, di ba, and 2 other banks. But it was still, it was palatable. The loss was extremely palatable to the banking financial system. We didn't hurt when the whole world came down on its knees, did we? Because of internal, well, one, hindi tayo, for some reason, hindi tayo tinamaan, di ba?
Well, there was an economist here who said that
we did get
the
hurt.
reason why our ship was able to weather the storm is because we've never left the harbor.
Nakatali pa na tayo.
We're still anchored and...
Okay. In other words, we're not in the playing field yet.
Yeah, we're not even...
We're not competing yet.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's a good thing that we're unaffected.
No, you already answered it. No, it's not a good thing. So a 20-year forecast, if we do not change, and it doesn't look like change is in the horizon, where will we be? Can our consumerism, the powers that are today, the SMs, those that are internal, those that are the taipans today, can they sustain our own consumerism and survive the country? That means the rich will get richer, and to hell with the poor, which is what government's doing anyway.
Going on now, yeah.
I guess we can. The answer would be yes. We can just sustain and stay like this.
Well, certainly in 20, 50 years, we'll still be there. We'll still be suffering. But I guess one factor that can't be discounted also is that the world is getting smaller. That whether we like it or not, communication, technology, transportation,
Everything's your fingertips na.
yeah, it integrates us. And we are still a big market. Whether, even if we are a poor market, we're still a big market. And we also have this big diaspora of people around the world. So somehow, I think it will affect the thinking of leaders, maybe not at the highest levels, but certainly
From the middle class up, going
yeah,
up.
the thinking middle class, I think, will probably start forcing some changes, maybe incrementally. If nothing happens, I mean, the ideal changes, no?
You are still in the Philippines. Why? I mean, you could have gone abroad. You have
No.
your own firm. You've made foreign money. Why have you chosen to stay here? Why not? Why didn't you go to Singapore, Hong Kong, and whatnot?
Well, I seriously considered moving.
Because I did. I left.
You left?
I left for 6 years.
But I actually went to certain countries and studied, and saw that these are really good places to live, to
Yes.
bring up family and all. But in the end, for me, this is still home.
But home is dying.
Home is dying.
It
but
has never left the port. We've never even gone to the seas,
Yes.
much less experienced the high waters, if not the low tides, so to speak, di ba? There's been no real adventure, nor has there been the end of the horizon. There is no wanting to see if the world is round or square. Di ba? We're still at
Yeah,
port.
we're still-
Nakatali pa tayo eh.
Well,
Why? Why did you come back?
Well, I can actually do my practice now because of technology. It's allowed me to do my practice out of Makati, with the rest of the world.
Yes.
And
Yeah, it's interesting, but that's true.
And it's worked out fine. But I guess the insane part there is that, at the back of my mind, if we all left,
Wala matitira. Ako, I found the country cheap, mind you. To live in Singapore, to earn money in Singapore is great, but
But you're
not to
going to
live
get-
there, not to live
Yeah,
there
yeah.
and spend money there. Ang mahal lahat eh. I love beer, and gosh, I'm not gonna pay what lumalabas $6, 200 pesos for one bottle, which is already expensive in the Philippines. It's 27 pesos. Plus, our beer is even better taste.
yeah. So it could be elusive, the
Di ba?
the attraction. No? I mean, so the Philippines could actually be a great place if it were just fixed.
Well,
And-
it's a great place if you have money. It sucks if you're poor.
yes.
So buti na lang tayong dalawa may pera. Kung hindi, umalis na tayong dalawa.
We're lucky. We're very
Parang
fortunate.
ganon. But that's really that's the sad part of
Yeah.
it. I hate to say it, but this is the reason why I've decided to come back, because I have an edge. And I like the weather. And it's not got nothing to do with nationalism, not really. But the system can work for me. But for those here who are poorer, for example, there is no way of getting out because education is still
Yes.
poor. The systems are not harmonic, so to speak. And yet we have the technology, we have the know-how to improve the system. But the system doesn't want improvement.
No. The system...
Maybe it's the masses who don't like it because they're the ones who vote these people all the time.
because
Elect and
that's-
regret sila eh.
But it's a system for, how do you call it? For authorizing, the family business. Basically, it's a family business.
Yes, the Philippines
The
is
whole
a family
the whole
business.
politics.
Yes, it
thing
is.
passed on.
Pero nakikita ng taong bayan, but then again, yung taong bayan middle class tsaka nagbabasa. Ang masa, hindi nila nakikita yun. They still elect these very same people and families over and over and over again. So maybe they deserve where they are and where they're going. Maybe, I know I'm sounding fatalistic
know.
and really down, but sometimes the harsh realities of truth need to be said. Ang cycle ng election, di ba? Elect and regret, elect and regret. You put an idiot up there, of course you're going to get idiotic management.
Yes.
Parang ganun lumalabas. It's as simple as that. And for those already making well, you guys did it. Hell, I didn't vote for that guy. Di ba parang ganun ang
So-
system eh? Okay, what would you correct first? Okay, given the opportunity, day one, ground zero. Wow, we can correct it. Who do we go after first to correct?
Day one, I think we really have to have a very solid competition policy framework and a strong antitrust law.
So legal muna or judiciary? Well, legal na yan eh.
Legal.
So legal. But that's legislation.
This
You're
is-
saying that's
yeah.
system eh.
It's a system so that the whole country gets in on the importance of competition. and it strengthens the law of supply and demand in the country. It
Antitrust, which is what it is.
Antitrust, yeah.
Antitrust,
And
yeah.
it offsets or counteracts or countervails the political economic power of the monopolies so that they can concentrate on competing rather than trying to influence
So lumabang kayo, hindi yung pupuntang army o sasabihin nyo kung ganito sistema para sa inyo. Compete in the marketplace.
Yes.
Open
And that goes for
competition.
all, even agriculture, I think. You have to remove all of these systems which encourage corruption in the
Subsidy.
agriculture sector.
So you're
Subsidies.
anti-CCT to begin with.
Well, it has its limits. It will help, but it has its limits.
Well, we're now up to 70 billion. Maybe we'll go up to 100, maybe 200 billion to make the people happy to keep Noy Noy on top or whoever is on top.
Or, at worst, it's a palliative. It's not.
What do you think of what's going on in the country right now? You've seen, I've already explained it as I did an opening.
Yeah.
The scam. Of course, you read the papers, you know exactly. How does that affect us with all that's going on right now?
Well, I guess it just affirms what the FDI sees.
So it's correct. You're so correct.
You're going to say, oh, see,
I told you so.
Your very leaders are stealing from you, the taxpayers. And that's their only reason for being there, is to steal.
Which is why we don't come in. Parang ganon.
That's right. So, and how can we rely on that system? How can I put in $1 billion and expect to get my ROI if I know that the branches,
the level playing
the
field is
highest
not level.
levels have no interest in actually growing the economy and letting growth spread to the rest of the country.
And you're saying earlier that it's not necessarily the rule of one man or it's the working of the whole system.
Yes, it's a whole system that has to be. We should also integrate with other economies, because that, I think, will also force us to upgrade our systems. No? So if there is an
Like the ASEAN, it's a
ASEAN.
perfect platform.
We should actually dive into that and try to maximize the benefits we can get out of it. And I think there's good potential for us within the ASEAN if we play our cards right. Then there are other systems like the EU would like to have a bilateral free trade area with us.
That would be good.
That
We
would
can
be-
compete.
Well, it's not competing, actually. It's market access.
Just market access.
And also the discipline of being able to comply with the standards of the EU market.
Ibang-iba, no?
Yes.
How about China? The veracity of China to actually open up and gobble up the Philippines in 10 years. I heard a senator say openly, I won't tell you who, but thank God he's out and he's old. And he said that in 10 years, the Philippines will be under China anyway. Who cares? No comment on
But
that.
China is very practical also.
Hey, it's a working system.
Yes.
It's a work in progress, but so far, it brought 650 million people out of poverty in a period of 10 years. Hey, there's something good about that. Diba? Although autocratic, again, no human rights, no democracy, they seem to have something correct, whatever it is.
I think we'll not be able to avoid engaging and interacting with China, both politically and economically.
We have to. It's in our region of the
Yeah,
world.
I think so. But China respects strength and power. Even if we're a relatively small country, if we can get our act together and behave really in a way that that shows that we are proud of our country. In other words, instead of spending the 20
Billions. and-
20 billion on luxury items, maybe we can buy 40 more Alcaraz class warships.
Yes.
And they will respect that, I think. That's so that's how you deal with China. But you have
It's
to
like China and Japan. As much as Japan is such a small state, and they've fought over centuries, maingat pa rin sila sa Japan.
Yeah, there's always that healthy respect, between countries that show strength, that show and encourage.
Tony, we're at the top of the hour. We're going to have to end the show. A very brief message you'd like to leave with our viewers as far as FDIs, business, and all the issues we've been talking about, the inadequacies of a system that should be harmonic by now, considering we've grown in the last supposedly 6 decades. I mean, now we have a budget of over 2 trillion, di ba? Ang galing, ano?
Yes.
Ang laki eh. Ang problema, it could be 10 times more, and it could be so much more effective. We both know. A quick message to our viewers when it comes to this and how to think.
Okay, well, even with 2 trillion, still a lot of money. We could have done so many things already if they just spent it correctly and wisely. Now, hope is not lost. You know, we always feel so hopeless sometimes. No? Maybe this is what's coming out now is really a wake-up call to the thinking middle class to do something about this. I mentioned already that we need competition. We need antitrust. We need the business to work in accordance with the law of supply and demand. Next, you have to have a working economy, a real democracy, I mean. And the presidential system, in quotation marks, that we inherited is actually mimicking the colonial administration system. It's centralized. It is not meant to spread development. So there should be very serious thought given to a federal system with a parliament that will spend the money without having to adopt any innovations like pork barrel or countrywide development funds, PDAF, whatever, would be no longer necessary. It has to be a system where people are elected from the ground up rather than the popularity contests that we have today, and just strengthens the system that we're stuck with. And finally, that we have to integrate. We have to see the Philippines as part of a larger regional and global system. And that means we have to re-engineer ourselves for that system. No longer the old colony of Islas Filipinas, but the Philippines that is now an integral part, the hub in, or the hub in the spokes in East Asia.
Thank you very much, Attorney Abad. Ladies and gentlemen, there you go. There's a lot that we threw at you, critical thought. He's not necessarily political, and he's not necessarily promoting or funding or even generating an advocacy towards the street or revolution. He's just talking about a system that requires harmony, and whether we like it or not, if we don't do it today, we're going to do it tomorrow anyway, because if we don't do it, it doesn't work. So the earlier we start doing it, the better off we're going to be. But these are systems that remain ideal to all of us. Bakit naman puro ganun, puro aspirational tayo? Then again, you and I don't seem to have that discipline. Who do I blame? Oh, gee, last week I put a finger on the president and I said, you have failed. I'm not sure we should rely it on, hindi mo ata tama, no? One guy, it's your fault. Hindi. It's all our faults, one way or the other, I guess. So one way we're going to have to wake up, and let's hope that we wake up soon before I die. Because I can't say anymore, because if I'm dead, wala na, tapos na. And I hope that goes the same for you, that the Philippines wakes up when you're dead as well. So the earlier you and I can nudge each other, hey, let's wake up, this dream is not real, or it shouldn't be real, then maybe we just might have that chance. Ladies and gentlemen, the country is yours. Nation building requires attention. And what else can I say? Be careful what you hear in media. It's not necessarily true. I know it's a funny way to end the show, but if anything I've done, I've generated some type of critical thought. Maraming salamat po. Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you.
You are what you watch.